Good morning. Good to see everybody here this morning. We're fortunate this morning. We have a guest speaker today. I first learned of India mission work with Ron Clayton when I was in college 40 years ago. I met Ron in Montgomery, Alabama. He came to Michigan where I preached and spoke, and then when I moved to Kentucky, one of the guys who lived close to me in Kentucky was a man by the name of Jerry Edwards. Jerry ended up working for several years in India mission work, so I've been familiar with this work for a long time. We've been sponsoring the work or helping sponsor the work in India for several years. Joe is here to bring us an update to the work they're doing there, and we're very glad to have him. And I'm not going to take up any more of his time. I'll just present to you Joe Evans.
I'll trip over that. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you. I've been here a few times now, and along with my wife, and I must tell you, my wife did travel with me to Van Buren. She had a minor surgery earlier in the week and had some infection last night and yesterday, and so she stayed at the hotel. So just please be thinking of her and know that she didn't ditch you. We love coming here, but she's got a little health issue going on, and please excuse her. We love coming here. I'm getting to know more and more of your names. You've been such a great partner with us in our work in India, and just as Roger let you know, he's known about India and Ron Clayton and Dr. Edwards for many years, and we're doing today essentially what we've always done in India. And today I'm going to give you just a little update of what we've been doing the last 12 months. I'm doing something different. You guys have probably heard me enough and have read our newsletters enough that I don't have to go back to the beginning and explain the whys and hows of much of our work anymore. So I'm going to do something brave. I came up here with no notes. And I will beg for your questions, because there are things that I touch on that seem important to me that may not be important to you. I came from a business background, and so I love statistics, and I love numbers, and I'm basically the CFO of our organization to India. And we are a big work, and I just wallow in the numbers. And sometimes I forget the story, okay? Sometimes I forget to share the story. And sometimes at the end of the day, when I meet you in the back, I forget, man, that's not what she wanted to know. You know, she wanted to know about this or that. And so I covet your questions this morning. And if you have none, I've got some for you, okay? and I'll try to walk through some of my pictures and just let you know essentially what's been going on the last 12 months. But I would be remiss if I didn't just thank you for your support, for your prayers, for the encouragement, for Ellen taking care of our bulletin back there and keeping communication about us. And just know, let me say this up front, if you have any questions or anything you want to know about our mission work, my contact information is back there on that India table, along with my whether it's email or text or phone call. Please call me anytime. Even when I'm in India, it's a 12-hour difference, but I'll be happy to address any concerns you have or any thoughts you have. I just like starting here every time. I am bad about saying, I did this in India, or I did this in India. And this verse just reminds me to remind you, I don't mean that. This is God's work. I'm just a tool. I'm just a resource for God. And we are partners working with God side by side in this mission effort. And just as you guys here in Van Buren have different natural bridges of opportunity that God opens to you, That's what we pray every week, right? God, give us an opportunity. Give me an opportunity to share the gospel with someone. This is ours with India. And India is, and you've heard me say this before, the easiest place in the world. In my opinion, I've been to about 20 countries. Easiest place in the world to hold a gospel meeting, to study the Bible with somebody. It is a religious country where about 80% of the population are Hindu, which means they are interested in listening about God. It was that way with Ron back in the 80s, Roger, and it's still that way today. And how long God keeps that open door to us, I don't know, because the government doesn't like us. And they missed the good old days when Christianity was not as successful as it used to be. India is the most populous country on the planet. 1/5 of the planet lives in India. Just so when you read through our newsletters and see, wow, how can they have that many Bible studies? We have about 500,000 gospel meetings a year. You say, how in the world can you do that? Well, 1/5 of the planet's over there. That's why. So just know. And I've said this before. Now, say this just to put the things in context. There are more Christians living in India than North America, Central America, and South America combined. We know of approximately, we have this huge database that we've been keeping for a few years now. One of the things that Ron struggled with years ago is how to keep up with our contacts. Because we would just go from village to village to village and just so concentrate on studying the Bible with people, establishing a congregation. And we did it for 30 years. And then one day we woke up and go, well, how do we manage this information? And so we developed a database. And in our database, we have about 130,000 churches of Christ in India that we have in our database. And we have pictures with GPS camera, and I can give my driver a location, and we can drive straight to that church. It's really cool. You'd never think, Chris, that could be done in India, but we can do that now. So anyway, just putting some things in context. That is our team. There's a team of 6 now. The upper left to you is our director, Robert Hall, and his wife, Faye, and they live in Athens, near Decatur, between Athens and Decatur, Alabama. The center top is Steve Snyder. He lives in West Virginia, about an hour from Morgantown. Upper right is our guy from Tennessee. His name is Ben Reniger. He and his wife lived in the southern part of Tennessee, around Fayetteville, Tennessee. Guy on the bottom left is a guy named Burley Stennett. He lives just north of Dallas. Guy in the center lives in Hot Springs with me. That's where me and Diane reside now, and then me and Diane. And as you know, we grew up just a stone's throw from here. We grew up in Boonville, and Diane's from Hot Springs, so I told her after we retired and started working in India full time, we'd go back to Hot Springs. So that's kind of where we are now. That's the team. There's 6 of us, and one of the things, and I'm just going to walk you through this because I've mentioned it a few times. When I go to India, if you ask me what does a normal day in India for Joe and Diane look like, we do a lot of administrative things. We have a large work. We have a large team. There's a lot of administration. It takes a lot of work to get money legally into a third world country like India. And so that's why I call me a CFO. And we have teams of people. And the picture you see now are a group of people who, every preacher that we aid and provide resources, we ask them to communicate to us. Now, in India, that's about 30 different languages, 33 to be exactly. So we have 8 people that we ask preachers that once a month gather in a county-wide area together, and we'll pay for their expenses. We'll pay for their bus ride if they gather together, and that's where we can get the pulse of how those congregations are doing in that region. And in return, they give us an update, a little one-page report of what's been going on in that church for the last 30 days. And if they do that we will do that with them, and we will gain access to what that congregation looks like. We know the names of the congregation. We know the ages. We know their strengths. We know their weaknesses, so that if we want to go up to that congregation at some point, we can look at our database and go, oh yeah, we know who they are. We have a picture of them. And so these group of people right here have been developed the last couple of years, and they have all these communication lines sent by email to them, and they translate them into English so that we team of 6 Americans, can read it. And that is a lot of information. So we have a team now that does that, and hopefully that will aid us in the management of money, of resources, of what tools they need, what they don't need, what languages that they're needed in, what do we need to print, and why. And so just letting you know, we're excited about that team, and they are the ones that make that work. When I'm not at the office in Hyderabad, and Hyderabad, we have 2 or 3 offices in India. Hyderabad is the biggest one. And Hyderabad's a place where we Americans blend in well. It is the Silicon Valley of the world today. And so when we set up an office there, the government, who does not like Christians for the last 10, 12 years, Prime Minister Modi wants to do everything in his power to go back to the good old days when Christianity wasn't so strong. And he really sees Christianity as it's dangerous for him. People start to think and make choices outside of their own political parties. And so just know that when we're in Kandapur, we kind of blend in. Kandapur and Hyderabad is the 7th largest city in India, and it's larger than New York City. And we Westerners blend in pretty good, and they kind of leave us alone. So that's why our office is there. And when I'm not in that office, I will go to these places, like in the picture above, one of these preacher gatherings, we call it KCMBIs, or preacher training schools. And they're little satellite schools where they just meet and give us this information, and in return, we give them whatever tools and resources they need. And essentially, that's what our work has been the last few years, is we've planted a lot of churches in the past. Now it's time to catch up. Now it's time for us to be Titus's instead of Apostle Paul's. To go back to just what Paul did to Titus. He sent him to Crete to not plant more churches, but said, I'm going to send you to Crete to develop leadership, to develop and mature churches. And that is where our focus has been the last few years and for the next few years. And so if you're going, man, Joe, it doesn't sound like y'all having as many conversions or planting churches as much, it's because this is catch-up time for us. It's time to send the Barnabases and the Tituses and the Timothys and go back and mature the church. Because as of right now, I know this may not mean as much as it did in the United States as a few decades ago, but in India, there are so few leaders. Less than 1% of the congregations in India have elders, have shepherds. And we have a school dedicated to just developing churches' future leaders, future elders. And so a lot of the work, a lot of the things that you'll be reading in our newsletters upcoming are, we're looking for good shepherds. Because they're missing in India. And I'm not just picking on India. Goodness, if you've seen the stats lately, even in the United States, it's not looking like it once did with leadership. So we're going to spend some time, some money, some agonizing hours of taking future leaders by the hand and walking them through what a shepherd does. Because no one, hardly anybody in India has grew up in a church with shepherds. And you want to know what an interesting class is like, talk to a group of men who've never been shepherds and tell them what their job is about to be. Most of them walk out and go, no thanks. It's all right. Why would I do that? So that's some of the issues that we're having in India now, is we're looking for leaders. And when I'm not doing administrative things, me and Diane are on the road talking to men and women who will hopefully be India's future leaders. I just shared with you that just so you know about what my normal day is. All the years that Ron had done this work, since the middle 80s, there were states that were very easy to have gospel meetings. There were India has a Bible Belt, just like the U.S. does. India has one too. And there's certain areas of India that are just really, really receptive, and some areas that aren't. One of the things that we've done the last year is we've plotted and planned where are some of these areas that we've kind of forgotten, that we kind of over the years went, this is kind of hard. And Northeast India is one of them. As far as I know, at the last India World Mission Workshop, there were about 44, 45 full-time American teams working in Indochina area. And only 3 of them work in Northeast India. We call it the Seven Sisters. I don't know if I have a map nearby, but I'm showing you these pictures. This is why we Westerners don't go to Northeast India. Not only does Prime Minister not like us and put a lot of hurdles in our way as we go evangelize different villages, in Northeast India, it's really hard. They make no bones about if you put up a church building, they'll burn it. And so you have to find ways. You have to find ways that how can I worship in an environment like that? Congregations have become an expert in congregation, we can't sing very loud. The neighbors can't hear us, or the police will be here. And so we're just letting you know we are trying our best to work up in these areas that we've kind of ignored because it was harder work. And we're working with people who are really getting persecuted. And it's a little dangerous for Westerners to go in some of these areas. Some of the areas were prohibited. And that's just a sample of what a message is sent to that village of what they think of the church. The people look a little Chinese. It's really on the border of China. You have China and Myanmar, kind of up there in the northeast, near Bangladesh, and the people look much more Chinese, but they still are just as eager to hear the gospel as those in South India. The problem is they got to be a little quieter, and you have to be really delicate. And when an American travels up to this area, you get questioned pretty good when you come through customs and immigration. And it's kind of dangerous. Maybe they may tell me I can't go again if I go up to that area. I tell you that because as dangerous as it is, as many congregations that we've started establishing, we've established maybe about 40 congregations up in this difficult area over the past 12 months. The most exciting thing about it happened by accident. Right across the border, many of these guys have relatives in China. And they are free to go across the border, unlike us. And they established 60 congregations in southern China in the past 12 months. Scaring the governments to death up there. But we didn't mean to. We didn't even tell anybody to. But we didn't know that that language could be spoken in the southern provinces of China. But you've heard me say this before. Indians travel like no one else in the world. An Indian passport could get into countries like Saudi Arabia and worship freely that you and I can't. And so we are learning every year how much value it is when you develop a good preacher and a good teacher from India. They travel and they go to places that you and I can't, and China's one of those. So these are all in areas that in the past have been really difficult, and I just wanted to show you. I stop here because in the past I've told you we operate 3 or 4 schools, depending on the season. And there are different types of schools. We have a school just for future preachers. We have a school for preachers that want to become better preachers. And then we have a school dedicated to shepherds. I call it the Shepherding University that that it is just for congregations send us their best, their shepherds of the future, and we grab onto them for a year and just tell them what's about to be in store for them, and to mature them. And then we had a school that was next to a school that we had, and we basically shut it down and decided to do something different. And so this is a school that we wanted to make basically a retreat center. When I was growing up around here as a kid, I remember I had a counselor from Van Buren. I don't know if it was from this congregation. When I went to Green Valley, you may know Green Valley Bible Camp up in Rogers? Yeah. I used to see Van Buren people there. We wanted to have that same experience for churches in India, someplace to send their kids for a week or two and just meet other kids from other regions of India. Hopefully if they speak the same language. Most Indians speak about 3 or 4 different languages. You have to. In India, when you cross a state line, you speak a different language. And I mean, it's not a dialect, it's a different language. They cannot understand. So we try to group youth groups or groups of widows or men or preachers, and we have a place now that we can have retreats. And they develop relationships, and this is one of our youth camps, youth groups. And we think they've been really successful. I show you this because we try to keep our Western traditions out of India, but a group of Americans were there doing a class. I think my wife was there as well. And at night, we Americans got together and do what we always did at camp. We lit a fire and roasted some marshmallows. Believe it or not, you can buy a marshmallow in India. And we found a store that had them. And ever since, every youth group that has a retreat now, they go find a hot dog or German sausage or something and just believe that they are Western for a night. And they just love it. And so we accidentally started a tradition. And wood is rare. It's hard to find a piece of wood. You farmers might get tickled at this. When you go to an Indian farm, whether it's a fruit farm or a rice farm, the fence posts are marble and granite. Granite and marble fence posts. Because it is the cheapest thing in India to make a fence out of. Wood, they would laugh at you. You can't find wood for fences. So when you're in a retreat area like this and you're scraping, you're not an Arkansas boy scraping for firewood, good luck. You're probably ripping it off an old barn or something. It's hard to find wood. So it's rare to see a little bonfire like this, and that's why. Any questions so far? You guys are doing all. I'm not supposed to be doing all the talking. I'm just going to walk you through what I've done last year.
Speaking of last year, I remember you saying, I hope I got this right. Go and take the building, make improvements, and the government take it.
Yeah.
After you make improvements. Is that still a situation?
Yeah. And it's that way all in India. Did everybody hear him? We have wrote about in our newsletters, and we have talked about it over the past year, that we put a big emphasis about 5 years ago, beginning, that we were going to help India build churches. We didn't want to build it ourselves. We didn't want to be a welfare program of building churches for every congregation that we could. But we call it, we're going to catch them in the act. If a congregation is caught in the act of saving up money to build a church, we would match them. We would invest with them. And that was a slow process. And over time, and we hadn't done that, because that's a difficult thing to do. First of all, it's hard for a church to own land. Many times, the village elders, if you met with them and begged them long enough, they would give the church a small piece of land with some conditions. They had to put immediately, as quickly as possible, a building. Well, the Hindus didn't like that. They knew legally there was nothing they could do, so they would sneak in and burn it right before worship service. or they would demolish it, or they would go get a backhoe and just knock off the blocks. And with no recourse, there was nothing the church could do. So churches in India were really in a quandary. What do we do? One part of the government tells us we can, and another part of the government allows citizens to come and just knock it down. And so, as you can imagine, they're frustrated. And they still, to this day, are struggling with. One of the biggest things elders are talking about throughout India, to answer your question, is they've just decided that every time that building gets knocked down, they're going to write about it in the paper. They're going to invite news people to tell their story. And the next day, they're going to start building it back. And a lot of preachers have gotten beaten up over that. They're trying to find other ways to send the message. You Christians did not get the message, evidently, so we're going to have to try something else. And there's a lot of fear of what can we do. Because in India, and maybe most third world countries, I've talked to other missionaries about this, and whether it's Africa or wherever, they struggle with the same issue. The church thinks in these countries that they would be taken more seriously, that it would legitimize them if they had a building. That's just this mindset. Without a building, we are just a house church, and that I'm excited about. They're not. They want the community to know that they exist, and they love seeing the big words Church of Christ on their building, and they're proud of it. But they walk a dangerous line doing that. They also make themselves a target. And so throughout India, there's this schizophrenia going on within the eldership of what do we do? I've told you guys in the past, and this goes back to this, is when you become a Christian, more and more states of India are passing these non-conversion laws. And what that means is if you abided by the law in India, before you became a Christian, you had to go to your local courthouse and tell them in advance you're going to become a Christian. And then they're going to do this background check. They're going to say, well, Roger, you have a government job. And there's only 5 positions for Christians in that department of your job. And 5's already taken, you're going to lose your job. What do you do? Or maybe your wife is a teacher. Or maybe you have children that go to that public school right down the road. And the government's going to make them think twice and 3 times and 4 times about how if you become a Christian, your children no longer have a chair in that classroom because only 3 are allowed in that room that are Christian. All the rest of them are Muslim and Hindu. So what do you do as a parent? And what do you, as an elder, or some of you shepherds, what would you tell your congregation if it cost you and your family your civil rights? That's what it amounts to. It's not just my kids can't go to school anymore. It's guess what? I don't get to dial 911 when an emergency happens in my neighborhood because the police won't show up. You don't have the right to file a criminal complaint anymore. Can you imagine? What would you tell them? Would you and your family, if you knew it cost you your job, or potentially cost you your job, man, you go back home and you do some more praying. And those elders, they gather those congregations together and say, guys, let's all do this together. What do we do? And I'm telling you right now, some congregations say, we're going to become a Christian, but we're going to be the quietest Christians you've ever seen. We're going to become a Christian and we're going to worship. I'm just not going to tell my employer. That's a tough life, guys. That's a tough life. And so whether it's buildings, whether it's how loud of a Christian am I going to be in this village? And most of our churches are in villages of 5,000 people and less. I mean, we see pictures, and I give you pictures of India, and there's these big mega cities all over the place. In fact, I told you before, you're not on the political map in India if you're not 1 million people. If If you're not a million, you're not even on the map. Your name doesn't even appear anywhere. And yet, most of our congregations, I'd say 75% of our congregations are in villages of 5,000 and less. So, what do you think? What would you suggest those leaders to do? I'm telling you, they ask me all the time. And I swallow hard. And often, I'll admit to you now, I say, I don't know. This is a social issue. So often, we Americans get over to India and we are asked social questions. I rarely get a biblical question about doctrine in India. You know what I get? Joe, I want to become a Christian. I've got 3 wives. Which one of them do I get rid of? How do I go about deciding which one of those I kick out of this house? I have kids with all of them. Oh, by the way, they're sisters. You can have up to 5 wives in India, legally. And they become a Christian and go, okay, I get it. This is not what God intended. You tell me, Joe, what to do about this. What do you say? I love taking elders. I take a few preachers once in a while to India, but I love taking elders. And we'll get them on stage and we'll have a forum with new elders of India. And there may be 300 elders in a room, and they're on a stage answering questions. And the American guys that we bring over there are so frustrated at the end of the day because they were all social questions. How do I fix this? How do I fix that? You say, Joe, I'm supposed to love my wife this way, and it just seems like a Western thought. You know, aren't women really property? It's just time after time, so often when we get before a congregation, they want us to fix their social problems. And there's a lot of them. I shared with you last time the issue of widows. Everybody remember our struggle with widows? Widows were never supposed to happen in India. It took Britain 350 years to get rid of, legally, a Hindu woman was expected to die with her husband. She wasn't expected to live. When your husband died, you died with him. And what that means is when it was time for the memorial service, they took your body to the side of a creek or a river or a canal, and they built a pyre, found some wood, and a good godly Hindu woman would voluntarily throw herself on that fire. Tradition for 2,000 years. And Britain to this day said it took to the 1960s where it wasn't a legal expectation of that woman to do so. The problem is, what do you do with the widows? Once you're widowed, you can't go back to your mom and dad. It's a public shame. The dowry has already been paid. You don't go back home. Nobody will hire you. It doesn't matter if you're a 24-year-old with 3 kids. You're not getting a job in the majority, 99% of the villages in India. Nobody will hire you. You're expected to do one thing: go on the street corner and beg. If you're lucky and you know about, there are 3 cities that are called safe havens for widows. They're large cities, and if you make it there, you're guaranteed by the government 1 meal a day and a roof over your head. So you wouldn't be surprised if I told you the people with the least amount of hope in India are the widows. And guess who fills up churches throughout India? Half may be widows. They have no hope, and they are looking for it. And when they see us, man, they are crawling in the door and saying, can you love me? Can you help me? And so often, you'll see some of the newsletters that we write about with widows. And the reason is because widows are so impactful because villages throughout India haven't seen this type of love before. We'll take a widow, and if a congregation is willing to help support her, here's what we'll do. We'll set her up in business. She She can't get a job, so we'll get her a job. We'll find out what she'd like to do, what her passions and her talent is. Maybe it's sewing. Maybe it's just operating a vending, being a vendor at a farmer's market. Whatever it is, we'll find her passion. Costs us about $1,200 to $1,500. Set her up in business, and she gets to keep her kids. She has choices. She doesn't have to marry again. And by the way, if she did choose to marry someone, she's probably the second or third wife, and she's not allowed to bring her kids in to the marriage. Just give her kids away before she enters into another marriage. So there's a hint at what leaders of Indian churches deal with. Very little arguing about doctrine. It is all about how do we make it through tomorrow. 75% of Indians to this day still make daily wages. It means if you didn't go to the rice fields, if you didn't go to the banana orchards, you don't get paid that day. Your family doesn't eat. So they're just scrapping over issues of how do I get food? And how do I interact with the community once they find out who I really am, that I'm a Christian? It's not all gloom. That's weird to say, but I'll give you an example, and I may have told this story before. Just like in the book of Acts, who are the churches that grow? What happened in Acts? Church is persecuted. What happened? Church grew. It's kind of funny how that kind of works. Still works today. You show me villages that persecute those Christians, that's where the church is growing the most. You know why? Because of stories like this. We helped a widow. She was able to keep her children. The government knocked on her door and said, this is a welfare check. Do you have a job? She says, no. They took her kids to the nearest big city and came up to the church elders and said, I need help. The church came up to me and said, listen, we will rent her a spot for a sewing business, but I need you to help buy the equipment and inventory. So we did. Overnight, this widow with 3 kids that the government just took her kids, now she's no longer on the streets. She's a successful business lady who got her children back, and they actually sent them to college. And the police chief comes into the worship service one day wondering, who are these people who gave a widow a job? It was a fact-finding time, a moment. That police chief is now an elder at that church. Funny how God works. That church was about 25, 26 people, membership. And once that community heard about how these group of people loved that widow, set her up in business, loved the unlovable, you couldn't keep people out of that church building. In India, we call that a butterfly moment. God uses persecution. God uses opportunity. And we are there for the Indian brethren to try our best to give them tools and resources and encouragement. And often that is just, I'm not giving them an opinion. I'm just putting my arm around them and praying with them for a while and get life. Allow God to lead us. So what are we supposed to do in those moments? How much time have I got, Roger? I didn't get very far on my slides. Great question. Any other questions? Don't leave here going, I wish I'd asked that guy from India this question. Yes, sir.
Hey, Joe, so Thailand is another place that we work with that struggles with finding elders. And can you talk a little bit about, did you mention a leadership school or a program, or what do you do with that?
Yeah. Have I talked to you about this before? Somebody gave me a call. Anyway, great question. Here's my short 4-minute answer. I was talking to somebody just up here a few moments ago before class. On the mission fields in third world countries like India, this is what happens so often. The Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3:10 that he's an expert builder of churches. Paul said, I'm the best. You want to know how to build churches? I'm your guy. And we took a long look in our organization about 5-6 years ago and stood back and said, you know what? We forgot Paul's pattern. And we kept wondering, where are the shepherds? Where are the leaders? Why aren't churches maturing? It's because we ignored them. We ignored them. And so one of the things that we did is we developed a school specifically for leadership. And I've talked to missionaries from Mozambique to Guyana, and we've all come to this realization in the West that for 20, 30 years, we did a great job of planting churches. We did a great job of preparing preachers to preach. Some of the best preachers in the world I know are in India and Africa. You know what we forgot to do? We forgot to send Titus. Titus chapter 2. What did Paul ask Titus to do? Go to a place that he had been 3 years before. 3 years before, he went to Crete, and he told Titus not to be their local preacher, but to what? Help appoint elders in every city, every village. So many of us missionaries all over the planet are coming to the realization that we have forgot an important step from the Apostle Paul. Focus on maturing churches. Because if you don't, you're going to be re-evangelizing that city the next generation. And we have spent, to answer your question, we have spent a lot of our resources going back to those congregations and finding out what did Titus do in Crete, because that's what we're about to do. And we have some schools dedicated for that. I would recommend, whether it's Thailand or Cambodia or India or wherever throughout Asia, if you're not spending time and resources, and I understand why we Westerners don't. It doesn't raise money. You want raises money? Baptism. Church plants. That's what gets attention. That's what people like to read about. It's hard raising money to do that work, but it's such a necessary work. Any follow-up? Anybody else? Yes, sir, Chris. Yeah, so the landscape has so changed in the last several years. The Churches of Christ, there were two groups that actually bought a satellite channel, and we call it the God Channel in India. There's a religious channel called the God Channel. Churches of Christ have used that periodically. What's happened is now they don't listen to radio. Radio's gone. And the TV, the government has known how successful we were at it and has shut those channels down to us. So I'm not saying it's not possible. It was so ineffective and improbable that it doesn't get used much. I know of 2 Americans that still do it, and they're frustrated. Okay, for half the country, the internet's great if you're 18 years and younger, which half the population of India is. And absolutely that is. In fact, some of our schools, we're trying to figure out how we can use the internet for that. But it doesn't help many of our existing congregations. They don't have access. But if you're talking about half the population, which are 18 years and younger, it's an absolute gold mine right now. Good question, Chris. Thank you. I am out of time. Roger's grinning at me. So thank you so much. Any questions I can answer any other time, my contact information is up there. Thank you so much.